This is Big Ideas from the ABC.
To my left here is Darren Hanlon. We're claiming Darren as a local today. He grew up just north of the border in Gympie and studied at Music College in Lismore, so I think that's a fair claim. He toured earlier in his career with bands The Lucksmith, Deer Hunters and Weddings, Parties Anything, and all the time was sort of penning songs and was eventually encouraged to write his own, and he's been a solo artist now for more than a decade and is up to his 6th album. His songs are famous for drawing significance from irrelevance, and yesterday he told the kids at the school day that he's sometimes criticised for having too many words in his songs, but if you listen closely, he's a fantastic storyteller. He's fresh off the plane from America, where he's been filming a music video in Portland. Everyone, please welcome Darren Hanlon. And then further over there is Missy Higgins, who most of you will know rose to rapid stardom after being discovered by Triple J Unearthed while she was still a school student. After 6 years and 2 albums, she a few years ago decided to sort of walk away from music for a while and give it a break. And her most recent album, The Old Razzle Dazzle, is very much about... her earlier songs were sort of about relationships and breakups, whereas the new album is about coming back to music and her relationship with music. Some of the songs, Sweet Arms of a Tune, the opening song on her latest album, Set Me on Fire, says, "Melody, you're the only one who saves me." And we'll be talking about that a lot in today's panel as well. So, everyone, welcome Missy. Thank you. So we are here at the Writers' Festival, and there's a lot of keen readers here, so I thought I'd just get started today asking each of you what you like to read. Darren, do you want to get started?
Well, I can tell you what I'm reading at the moment.
Yep.
Woody Guthrie's Bound for Glory. I've been trying to read a lot of travel books, starting with Pilgrim's Progress and, On the Road, it's all that kind of stuff. But Woody Guthrie, I'm just really enjoying the language. He often misspells things, and it's, I think it's a good lesson in actually being able to write in your own voice. And that's one thing. Woody he wrote a lot of songs, but it's just beautiful to read the way he spoke.
Yeah.
As well.
Do you like to read magazines, newspapers, or it's mainly fiction, non-fiction,
I
travel?
read newspapers, not so many magazines, but just mainly novels, really.
Yeah, fiction.
Yeah, a little bit of poetry, but just mainly fiction.
Yeah.
It's good to read every day if you're trying to write something.
How about you, Missy?
Actually, lately I've been reading a lot of autobiographies from musicians as well. I'm reading Chrissy Amphlet's biography at the moment, autobiography, and it's great. I just can't believe how crazy her life was. I can't believe that the amount of drugs that they took actually during the course of their career. Yeah. It's a really great read, and I'm loving actually her style of writing is really straightforward. It's not flowery, and it's... I guess she has so much content that's interesting enough in itself that she doesn't need any kind of poetry around it. And actually before that, I read Mark Seymour's autobiography, which is a really great read. I really love his style of writing in a different way. He's got a really great dry sense of humour. And I just get a lot of inspiration out of reading, the success stories of musicians.
Are you thinking of writing your own memoir?
I would really like to one day. Yeah, I feel a little bit young for that at the moment, or I don't feel like I've had enough distance from everything, and I'm obviously still touring and recording, so I'd quite like to be, in the next phase of my life, maybe even retired, so I can, fill my days with something.
That was my next question. What other kind of writing are both of you doing other than songwriting? So if you want to tell us if there's any other kind of...
Yeah, I've been doing a fair bit of writing lately, actually. It started with the Women of Letters events in Melbourne. I don't know if any of you know that. It's curated by Murray Cardy and Michaela Maguire. And they give you a topic to write a letter about, and then you present that letter to the audience, and it's a really beautiful idea. So I've done a few of them, and some things, the liner notes, which I'm doing tonight actually, and I'm doing a bit of writing for my next project, which I'll be announcing tomorrow.
Okay, we'll have to wait for that one. How about you, Darren? What other writing?
Well, I write a daily diary, and I have for the last maybe 10 years. I try and write every single day, just to keep the pen moving, really. And none of it's much good. Every now and again, because it's a chore, it's become a bit of a chore. Every day will start with "I had porridge." It's not. It's just. That's all it is. It's just an exercise to keep the pen moving. And
Did you read The Artist's Way? Is that what started you on that?
I didn't actually.
Oh,
no,
right.
I just. I'm really forgetful, so I started keeping a diary just with facts and names and
Right.
meals, and and it's just grown out of that. And so now, if I have a day where I don't do it, I feel somehow like I've done something wrong, and I'll often go back and fill in the days. That I haven't
I
written.
ate on this day.
Yeah. It's good to remember that stuff.
Yeah.
It's really good for tax too, because if you get a receipt and you go, what? I spent $1,000, and then you go back on that day. Oh, I rented a sports car. Yeah.
Do you get any songs? Do you go back and actually get any songs from the diary, or it's just tax and meal planning?
Well, I'm also trying to write a book at the moment, just about this last album that I recorded, just the adventures that happened. I started telling people about things that had happened in the process of writing this record, and they said you really should write a book. So I'm halfway completed this. It's kind of a very diaristic book. Yeah, it's straight out. So the actual daily diary has become very invaluable. So I can go back and actually work out exactly when things happened and maybe what I was feeling. There's not a lot of feelings in there. I'm terrified of someone, finding it one day.
See, that's all my diary is feelings.
Yeah.
Mine's fact.
Tell us about the
I
story
wish I
when
had
you
some
lost
fact.
your diary, Darren.
Oh yeah, I lost. 2012 is gone. I got robbed. I got robbed in Barcelona, and which is also why this album has taken a long time, because I had all my demos and a lot of the recordings, and so I lost my laptop, my iPod, my phone, all my money, and but the hardest thing was the diary, the daily diary, because it was November, so I'd written the whole year, and that's a lot of porridges. So that was hard. That was really hard to and that's why I actually thought about stopping the diary then. But then someone said, no, you should. Maybe it's going to change the way you write, a little bit. But it's certainly, I've learnt the art of backing up.
Yeah.
That my mum has always been saying, "Have you backed up? Have you backed up?" And she can't even use a computer, but yeah.
And Missy, you said your diary's full of feelings. Do you
Yeah.
write a daily journal as well?
I do, and I'm terrified of my future kids reading it too. I was just contemplating the other day, I should really burn all those diaries, because they're so self-indulgent and they don't make any sense. There's nothing linear about them. It's just like, oh, the darkness descended upon me, and because mostly, I don't really ever write when I'm feeling happy. So when I'm going through something intense, I'll pull out my diary and just...
And do you go back to that to then write songs?
Actually, I do sometimes when I'm... because I write songs in blocks, so if I'm in my writing stage, I'll just take 6 months or something and just be a recluse for a while, and I'll go back through all my diaries, because they're quite poetic. Like they're not structured in like a traditional diary with sentences and stuff. So often I'll read a line and it will inspire me to write a song just out of that line. So it's handy.
So my next question is biography or autobiography? Do both of you write songs that are fiction and based on your life?
Mine are all autobiography, pretty much.
Yeah.
And if not, they're from a story that I've heard directly from someone else. But I find it really difficult to invent new worlds, and they've all kind of happened to me in some way.
And do you know straight away when something happens, you're like, oh, I'm going to turn this into a song, or is it sometimes a few days or weeks or months before you look back?
Sometimes it takes a little while. Often mean, that's the great mystery in songwriting. There's certainly, a number of different ways you can approach a song, and some of them that hit you in a flash of inspiration, you may not know, and maybe for a year later or so, that what it was even about. I've had interviewers say to me, "Oh, that song of yours, that was about your inability to face them," and I nearly started weeping. I went, "Yeah, it is. I didn't know. I didn't even know." So yeah.
Have you tried to invent a story? Have you tried that kind of songwriting, or it doesn't really interest you to just create a story?
I feel like there's not as much emotional weight in it for me if I'm writing about someone else that didn't. I've got this song. Once on one of my trips to Broken Hill, I read this article about a couple that had received an award in Cobar for operating a video store for a number of years, and I thought, that's interesting. But yeah, I guess that is a great service to a community like that, is owning a video store, and I wrote a song about them. I just invented... That's one of my only songs I've invented, this story about this couple that opened this video store. And it's not the best song, but it's pretty... I don't play it. But.
How about you, Missy? Are you always writing about your own experiences?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, I think even my more fictional songs definitely have an element of truth in them. I mean, the actual storyline can be fictional, but the emotional heart of the song has to be autobiographical if it's going to provoke any sort of feeling in people, I think. That's been my experience over the years, is whenever I'm in a space where I feel like I need to write a song for cathartic reasons, that's when it's the most powerful, because I have... it's the intensity of the emotion, I guess, behind it. It's just really hard to find an intense emotion about a story you've just made up in your head, or someone else's story, in my experience. So, yeah.
You said when you were writing your journals, that's when you're feeling dark. How about when you're writing songs? What's the best headspace for you to write a good song?
I've thought a lot over the years whether a song is better if it comes out of a dark or a light place. And I don't think it's either. I think it's when you've got something you feel like you really want to get out of you. And that can be something that's not necessarily depressing or dark, but it can be something that is maybe a little bit complicated for you to deal with inside yourself, And the process of putting it into words or putting it into a song is kind of like, I think of it as all these jumbled up kind of pieces of puzzle kind of floating around in this liquid inside of me, and there's no way for me to be able to put it all together until I can purge it out of myself. And then it's a really nice image, because you just imagine kind of pieces of visceral vomit clumped amongst, puzzle pieces. But that's what my emotions look like, I think, when they're in physical form. So it's definitely it's easier to process when it's outside of yourself, and I think any writer can relate to that. Yeah.
I saw Nick Cave speak at Ulwood Writers Festival a couple of years ago, and he's written 2 novels, and he said that he wrote both his novels in the back of the tour van, and they flowed out of him, and then he just got them published. And anyone who writes novels knows that that's really a very rare story. I was kind of like, bastard. But he said when it comes to writing songs, he gets up and he puts on his Nick Cave suit, and he goes into his office and he sits at his desk, and he said it's excruciating. He said he sets really strict hours and he sits there, and it's a really difficult process to write his songs. What do you do, Darren? I'll get you started. Like, do you turn up to a desk or do it on the road? Or
I guess I'm a bit like Missy. They'll all come in one... Well, there'll be an economical need for me to come up with a new batch of songs. So usually they happen within 3 or 4 months. I'll commit myself to it. But that's where I kind of utilise this great tradition we have in Australia of the country town hotel or the caravan park, which a lot of countries don't have these really cheap boarding house rooms anymore that you can go to. But Australia still does. You can still... if you're lucky, find a $20 room, but certainly a $35 room. in any of these country towns. I've written songs. I can pretty much geographically pinpoint where all these songs were written. Broken Hill and Burke and Ningen, Lithgow, Katoomba, all over the place. Lots. Everything on the Country Link map. Every stop I've stayed at, and I find the country town is a good thing because once you've gone to the 3 op shops, there's not much else to do. So, and I'll often choose towns that don't have mobile reception. It's just eliminating all those distractions. Certainly no internet. Just you don't take some good books with you, and your soul just feels refreshed after you've had 2 days off the internet. It's amazing how clear your mind is. And I actually feel like the internet has slowed me down a lot. Just that distraction, and I think that constant clicking, following these little pathways, I think to write songs you need to be clear, and you need to follow these linear paths in that kind of way, and not jumping all around the place. Country towns for me is how it happens.
How about you, Missy? You said you do it in blocks. Do you go away or from home?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the Nick Cave putting on his suit thing, because I actually took inspiration from him when I was having a huge writer's block about 4 years ago now. And I didn't put on a suit per se, but I got dressed up and I hired a little... I rented a tiny room above a florist in Northcote, and I lugged my instruments up there, and I went in there every day, from 9 to 5 or whatever. And I did that for maybe about a year, and it was the most miserable time I've ever had. I just remember kind of late at night just sitting on the piano sobbing, going like playing chord after chord, because I was so lost, and it was something to do with the repetitive, monotonous, job-like nature of just going into the office every day. So I got out of there, and I. Long story short, I just focused on something else for a while, and then the songs started coming, and I'm similar to Darren in that I have to usually get out of town or travel. I've done a lot of writing around the United States. For my last album, I put out a big group email to all my contacts, and I said, if anyone has a house, they need house sitting, or a dog that needs fed while you're away, or a spare room or a couch, I'd love that. Preferably if you have instruments in the house, that would be great. So I did that for about 6 months around the States, and that was such a great thing to do, because it's new environments, and you get to see. It's like you refresh the page in your mind every day, and you get to have different stimuli, and it's just, it gets you out of your comfort zone, I think.
You were just mentioning writer's block, and I know at Sydney Morning Herald, when I was a trainee journalist there, they said if you sort of have writer's block when you're just writing a newspaper story, just have that one person in mind when you're writing, and just imagine going to the pub and telling them the story that you're trying to tell. Darren, I'll start with you. Do you have a person in mind when you write your songs, and does that person change sometimes depending on the song?
No, not generally. I mean, I often think of the audience. I'll often look at a batch of songs that are about to be released and think, what does it need? Tempo, tone, emotion-wise, should it be a bit funny? That's when I'm being clinical about it, but often you don't think about anything. You get these ideas and just follow them through, I think. I don't often think of any individual, unless I'm writing it for a specific person, which I have done before as well. Yeah.
How about you, Missy?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. If anything, I think of an audience. I just think of what it would feel like to play that song at a show, because when you play a song live, I don't know if you have the same thing, but it makes so much more sense than when you're just playing it in your own room. You sing it out loud, or you say it out loud, and somehow it's much clearer. Like if it's an effective chorus or whatever.
You ever try the mirror?
The mirror.
Just pretend, see what it looks like to play to an audience.
I do.
I don't do that. I just
when I'm trying to decide what to wear on stage, I often stand in front of the mirror and go, like this and pretend I'm like playing the piano or guitar. What does this look like when my arms are up like this?
So Darren and Missy have both prepared. They before the session today, I asked them both to choose a song, and we'll talk through that song right from the very first time they had the idea through to, does the words come first or the music come first, and how does that work? So, Darren, if you want to introduce your song and just talking about the specifics of creating.
Oh yeah, well, this one, this is kind of what we were just talking about before. It is actually about someone else, but I was recording this. And I chose this song specifically for this festival because it was almost written about a book by writer Thea Astley, who I know spent a lot of time in Byron Bay and maybe spoke at this festival a few times. But this one still gets me to the whole mystery about how it was created. So we did an album in an old silent movie theatre in Pomona, which is just up the road from the farm that my family live on. My grandparents at the time were living on the farm, and I spent many years going to this old cinema watching movies. But it's the longest, at the time was the longest running silent movie theatre in the world, and it just amazed me that it was in this little Queensland town, and no one really went to it. Like, it was just this gem, just sitting there. That's where I got my film education. I'd go there, and there was an old guy running it who'd play the organ to the Buster Keaton films, and so I asked him if we could record an album there, and he said yes, and he gave us the keys for 2 weeks, and I had this kind of melody that I was working on, and I didn't know what the song was about, but these snatches of lyrics would just pop into my head, and I thought, this is weird, where is it coming from? And so he just happened to tell me, he said, you should check out this Thea Astley book. It's called A Descant for Gossips, and it's written all about Pomona. And she was actually run out of town after this is his story. She was run out of town after writing it because it featured a lot of the locals, even though she changed the name and changed the name of Pomona to Corowa. All the other towns, Gympie and Tincan Bay, and it describes this. It has this beautiful passage of driving to Brisbane from Gympie on the old Bruce Highway, when all the little stops, past Australia Zoo, and that's where it is now. But that's the old highway. Anyway, I went and got the book straight away, and it turned out it's a real tragic story, and it's a true story about a schoolgirl that we went to school in Pomona, and half the book is set in the hall that we were recording in. And it wasn't till I'd finished the book I realised all these lyrics that I'd already had related directly to this young girl, and it felt like she was speaking to me. And this is a hall that my grandmother had danced in and seen movies in and stuff. So it just sends a shiver up my spine.
Can you describe? You just mentioned that snatches of lyrics were just coming to you. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Was it when you were about to fall asleep, or just in the middle of the day when you're doing something else? When did that?
No, I was just playing the chord progression, and I was trying to make it like a Kinks song. I was listening a lot to the Village Green album, and how the Kinks often a lot of those songs are written about very English suburban scenarios, and so I guess I was trying to come up with an Australian equivalent. But yeah, these lines, I just play the chords over and over, and I just write these lines down, and it creeped me out that I felt like someone else was writing the song. It's, you hear those stories, and this was the only time it's ever really happened to me where I felt like another voice. Yeah.
Do you want to play the song now?
Sure.
Do you want to introduce the song first?
It's called The Ostracism of Vinnie Layla. All around the room in a whirl, you saw dancers catch fire when you're still a girl in a town that's built on the whispers of tattlers, and yet to inspire a single dot in the Commonwealth Atlas. God only knows how these things ever start, and An empty plate in the place of a heart that finds its way on the trails of crumbs and stains window panes with the prints of thumbs. So go, take rest, pull your blankets up tightly with your knees to your chest. A harmless sound, but to such delicate ears it might seem like there's a zoo burning down. A nagging ache, there must be someplace better. Search through every library book, down to the last letter. Even Thornfield Manor sounds enticing, with echoes down the halls and on the walls the heads of bison. So go, take rest, pull the blankets up tightly with your knees to your chest. A school yard song, and no one can blame you for getting it so horribly wrong. The old saddler's breath always smelled of leather. The cafe signed letters been faded forever. Irrelevant facts from the history tester snowed under the chalk dust of last semester. Can't you see what it's done to your mother, what it does to me now? All their words will shatter into pieces when I lock you in my arms again.
It's such a treat being able to combine the words and the songs today, so thank you for that.
No worries.
And Missy now can introduce her song. And
It's called Cooling of the Embers, and it's on my last album. It's a song that I wrote after visiting my grandma in hospital when she'd had a stroke and was beginning to suffer from the early onset of dementia. And I was dealing with these emotions that I'd never experienced before about feeling as though I'd lost someone while they were still in my life. And she was slowly becoming a really different person to what she used to be, and she used to be really kind of just fierce and outspoken and really extroverted and confident, and she was losing all that confidence and becoming this quite timid person and talking a lot more about the past and about death and about soon seeing her late husband in heaven. And it was a strange experience. Like I was sitting on the side of the bed of someone who was half in this world and half in the next world. And I went back to my studio above the flower shop, and I sat down and I thought, I really want to write a song about this, but it's so personal to me and it's so real that I want to do it justice, and I want it to be a beautiful story about her, but not disrespectful. And there was all these emotions going through, like, do I have the right to tell this story? And so I started writing about someone that was half in this world and half in the next world. And so I started writing it in Northcote, and then I got a little bit stuck with the lyrics, and I just couldn't figure out which chorus to use. I had so many different versions. And then I went on my trip to America, and in each place I kind of wrote a little bit more of the song, and I ended up in Nashville, out the back of someone's house in a guest house that had a piano in it, and And I decided to send the lyrics to a friend of mine, an author, Harlan Coben, who I'd recently done a kind of a tour with in the States, and ask his opinion. And that was a really interesting process because I'd never done that before because lyrics are so personal to me. And so I explained to him what I was trying to achieve with the chorus, and I sent him the different options. And anyway, he wrote an email back, and he was very supportive, but everything he said was the opposite of what I instinctively felt. You know, like he said, the second verse was his favourite because it had this line in it. The one you loved, the one you never could let go of. And I thought that was just the most basic, simple line in the song, and that it was the least interesting, and that was his favourite bit. And there's a bit at the start of the song where I talk about under her skin were galaxies of black and blue, and talking about the different colours under her skin were kind of poking through. And I thought that was a really beautiful metaphor because it was so multi-layered, because to me it felt like kind of this eternal kind of entity was coming to kind of drag her away from the inside almost, and she was kind of turning into the ether, and he didn't really. He's like, so what does that mean? Does that mean that she's covered in bruises? Does that mean is darkness descending upon her? So that was a bit he didn't like, and he also liked one of the parts of the chorus that I wasn't so sure about. Anyway, so but he was very supportive, and it was really helpful because it was a sounding board, and when his opinions came back to me, I knew what my opinions were, you know. Yeah. So it was almost like I needed someone to tell me their opinion so I could realise that I thought that they were wrong.
You can fight for the things that you wanted, and then you realise you're fighting for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think that that's really necessary to do that for me, to send lyrics off to someone else. But it was an interesting experiment, and like, how much am I going to trust my instinct, and how much am I going to trust, a professional writer? But I think it's a very different thing being a novelist to being a lyric writer, because for me, so much of my lyrics are about the sound of the word rather than the word itself. I mean, a lot of it is also the word itself, obviously, but if a word doesn't sing right, and if a sentence doesn't sing right with the right inflections here and here, it can take the meaning out of it completely. So, I think in order to understand lyrics, they need to be sung.
You were talking about writing, and you sort of did that, which I assume means handwriting. At what point in that song did the music come in? When was that interaction happening between the words and the music?
I think I sat down on the piano first, and I started doing this kind of two-note kind of chord on my right hand, and I just got usually I do that, I play around on the piano and I get a general feeling, I just create a general vibe, and then just some lyrics kind of come to the surface, and then I jot them down, and when I've got a little bit of an idea of the direction that the song's going, I'll take the page away, and I'll sit on the floor, and I'll just write lyrics out until I've exhausted that, and then I'll go back and I'll kind of shape the lyrics to fit the melody. So it's like kind of a back and forth thing for me.
Do you want to play the song for us now?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Sorry to have my back to you all. Can you hear that piano? Yep. You put your hand on top of mine. You're talking fast, but talking blind. And I can't bring myself to meet your eyes, 'cause death is slowly covering you in galaxies of black and blue. When under your skin all his colors blue, and you're only half here, like someone left a frail body and took the rest. But I remember, whoops, wrong chord. Remember when you were strong and never wanted help from no one. What you become is not who I remember. She's back again through summers past. The smell of rain and freshly cut grass. Seems those ordinary days are the ones that last. Oh, 'cause he was there, the one you loved, the one you never could let go of. And there's something you know as you're looking up, but you're only half here, like someone left a frail body and stole the rest. But I remember when you were strong and never wanted help from no one. What you become is not who I remember. Is this the cooling of the embers? Is this the cooling of the embers? 'Cause you were not who I remember. It's like you are a child, you are a child, you are a child once more, and all of our yesterdays have gone. You put your hand on top of mine. You're talking fast, but talking blind. And I can't bring myself to meet your eyes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks. That was awesome. Well, sadly, we're coming towards the end of the panel, so I'm going to ask each of you just one more question before we go over to question time. And it's just, I'm assuming there's probably some budding songwriters in the audience here, so maybe a couple of tips for songwriters or one thing you wish you knew before you started songwriting yourself. So, Darren, do you want to kick that off?
I guess just spend a lot of time doing it and don't be afraid to just go. You're going to have to go off on your own for a little bit, you know, like that's just part of how it is. You've got to be alone to write, to access those feelings, those emotions. And, you know, if a song takes a year or even longer, so be it. Some songs that's just what they take. And don't be competitive. There's enough space for everyone to write their songs. And, you know, I think that's a trap that a lot of people fall into. Oh, it's not going to be as good as this, or you just got to do what you do best. You know, just try your best, and yeah, hopefully it'll work.
Thank you. How about you, Missy?
Yeah, what he said.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
I think not being afraid to suck for a while. You know, I think when a lot of when I started out, I wrote a lot of really bad songs for years, and they'll never see the light of day, hopefully, if I've burnt them all correctly. But yeah, I think there's this kind of culture now, especially with the reality TV thing, that, you know, success should happen overnight and then it should be massive and long lasting. But it's really, no career that has longevity starts quickly. It takes years of just kind of practicing and honing and just playing shitty venues and playing in front of whoever you can, you know, open mic nights. I used to do a lot of them, and just, getting the hours in, really. And so the other thing I would say is I think it's important to try and kind of, carve out your own little space, because there's and I think it's really easy to when you're starting out, and I think it's important to kind of copy the people that you really admire and to play those songs and take in as much as possible. But then with that, I think to be really great, you need to find something original out of all of those things, and that's going to be inside of you. It's not going to take some sort of massive intellectualizing of anything. It's going to. You've just got to let let yourself shine through somehow, because there's going to be something interesting and original inside of you that is what makes you great. Great.
Yeah, I think and also what you were saying, the Australian Idol generation has kind of put more of an emphasis on money and the business and all that kind of stuff, and this false sense of success. I think, playing those open mic nights, that's the beauty of it. Like those experiences are things that you'll always remember, and the struggle. You know, it's the journey, and I think you shouldn't be worried about fame or money or any of that stuff. I mean, that just turns me off, the whole business. It's being able to play music with your friends and just travel and meet people and strive for that perfect song. You know, maybe you'll never get there, but just, you know, that's the beauty, is the journey. Yeah.
We've only got 5 minutes left, sadly, so I'll get started on questions. Yes, the woman in the black top.
I can yell. Okay, how do you find diversity? Like, how do you keep from writing the same thing?
Who are you looking at, or does it not matter?
Well, you're kind of like an icon.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. How do I keep from writing the same thing over and over? It's hard, because sometimes I do write a song and I'm like, oh, that's exactly the same chord progression as such and such. And sometimes I do repeat myself. Like, there's little bits in a lot of songs that sound like the others. But I think by listening to a wide variety of music, I really find inspiration in other music. So, I think listening to lots of different genres and just going out and seeing lots of live music too, that really inspires me to keep writing different kinds of songs, and just broadening my scope a bit and just borrowing from people. Think, oh, that was a really interesting beat, maybe I'll try writing a song with that, you know. So, yeah.
And the gentleman behind her, yes?
When you've got the idea, do you try to push through it and finish it?
I've got a comment on that, even though that was aimed at him, sorry. But I think when I personally have an idea, I need to see it out until the end of its capacity. Like, I think I definitely, if I'm on a roll, I need to stick on that roll. But then I think sometimes you just get really stuck, and you can just throw shit at the wall, and it's nothing's going to stick after a while. So I think it's important to take yourself away when you feel the time is right, because you can just start kind of going over and over the same thing, and that can be detrimental.
Yeah, I think age can, you know, if you're a little bit older, when you come back to it, can add something to it, or maybe you've just a bit more experience by the time you get back to it. But I'm the same. I've got to see it through if I have, because I don't get that many ideas, so each one's precious, you know. I've got to...
Yeah.
But it depends if you've got emotional attachment to it. If it's about a relationship or something, obviously a year from when you started it, you're going to feel different about it. And maybe the song can be a bit more analytical rather than just steeped in pure emotion. So the songs can change, and I've gone back over songs that I've already recorded and changed them to suit new feelings or new situations. So yeah.
Any other questions?
Hey, I basically took a day off work for your latest album to just listen to it on repeat until I could understand where you were coming from with every single mini line that you had. But how do you stop? How do you, like, as a songwriter, how do you stop looking at what everyone else is thinking of what you're saying and just saying what you want to say, if you understand what I'm trying to say?
Firstly, thank you for your dedication to listening to my album. Thank you. So how do I shut out the other voices, in other words? Yeah, it's hard. I mean, you're a human, so you can't help wanting other people to like your stuff and wanting other people to understand your stuff. But I think ultimately it's you've got to shut it out, because there's going to be conflicting ideas coming at you from every direction, and I've tried to do that before to get like with Harlan Coben, I just it's sometimes it can be a bit too confusing. So sometimes it's nice to just find that one or two, that one person or that one or two people that you trust. Like I love playing my songs to my family, even though they love everything I do, even if it sucks. But it's nice, if you trust someone's feedback, if they're another singer-songwriter or something, that can be good.
Just one more question over here.
By the way, my nan, she hated everything I did, and until I brought out a spoon. I brought out this merchandise. I thought I'd have my own souvenir spoon. And she thought that was the greatest achievement of my career.
That is a really good idea.
Another question here.
Just
Thanks,
a picture
guys.
of me.
I was just interested in how you define a perfect song.
Is there such a thing? I'm not sure.
I always thought growing up that From St Kilda to King's Cross, the Paul Kelly song, was a perfect song. Like, I wouldn't change a single line.
He's probably got more perfect songs than anyone.
He probably, yeah. That one, to me, I mean, I tried to analyse it, and not a lot of it rhymes. It's just this pure, it's just pure emotion. So you can kind of tell that maybe I don't know, I've never spoken to him about it, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of framework there. It's just this pouring out of emotion. I'd say that's a perfect one.
Talking about Paul Kelly, he did say that he wishes every single song he'd written before he turned 30 would just disappear off the face of the earth.
Yeah,
I'd disagree. I think all those old songs of his are fantastic.
Do either of you have songs that you wish it would disappear off the face of the earth? That you'd like to draw all these
most
people's
of my
attention
music's
to?
been written before I was 30.
Well, of
so
course, yeah. I don't mean before 30 for you, of course, but...
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, the first song off my first album I wrote when I was 15. So every time I play that at a show, it's got sentimental value, but it's just, there's lines in it like, I'm all for believing if you can reveal the true colours within. I just cringe every time I sing the true colours within. I'm like, well, first of all, that's already been taken by a song. I don't know, but yeah, you've got to look at it through sentimental glasses, I think. And if other people respond to the song, then who are you to say that it's not a good song?
That's the end of this session. Thank you so much, Darren and Missy. It's been lots of fun.
Thank you very much.